Hey everybody! How was your weekend? Hope you had a good one. So, last week I went to MFF. So, now that we've gotten all these little other things out of the way, I can actually start talking about the convention itself for a little bit. Um, so, the one first topic I want to talk about is probably revolves around probably what the most interesting panel for me was this year. And usually it's something new, something interesting, something I thought was, different than any other conventions that I've had so far. So the one I want to talk about is this one that was called the furry dancing, like the dancing workshop. You didn't need a fursuit to attend, but basically it was held before the preliminaries for the fursuit dance competitions. Basically, they get people together and they do preliminary dancing, and then they select people who, will be part of the actual dance competition. So the little dance-off thingy later on in the convention, which that started in I think it was Furry Weekend Atlanta started the furry dance sort of competition idea, and it's grown ever since. Basically, most furry conventions now have some form of furry dance competition. Even ones that are a little too small, in my opinion, to have them. To me, it's like you need to have at least 1,000 attendees before you start getting into that territory, because then you have a bigger pool of individuals to have these kind of competitions with. Because it is a very specialized field, and it is a very difficult task to do. But I've always been curious. I've always been curious as to how difficult actually is it, because it's something I've never really attempted before. And when I was reading through my schedule thing, and I'm like, I've never seen anything like this at a furry convention before. And I think it's a very important thing because a lot of people might, it's like I see these people dancing up there, I would like to try and do it myself. And this gives them a great opportunity to give it a shot. So I was like, okay, cool. And then I saw, it's also held in Rosemont Center 21. That's interesting. That's interesting in and of itself, because this year is the first year I've ever seen any. I've been to about 3 Midwest Furfests prior to this one. This would be the first one I had my suit with me. But this was the first time I've ever seen anything held within the actual Rosemont Convention Center. For those of you not in the know, MFF occurs in the Rosemont area of Chicago for the one weekend of the year. Usually the hotel spaces around the Rosemont Convention Center are taken up by people who are attending the convention. The convention itself is held at the Hyatt Regency, which is a large hotel near the convention center. It's not held in the convention center itself, which was a mistake that I made my first year attending, because MFF 2011 was the second convention I ever attended. The first one was Anthrocon 2011. And Anthrocon is held in the actual convention center. At least the main staples of it are actually held in the main convention center. There's some stuff that's held in the West End, but the main bulk of the convention is actually within the convention center. Thinking along those same lines, I accidentally thought, okay, we're at a convention, let me walk over to the convention center, and I was met with automobiles and the fresh scent of new car smell and wax. And I'm looking down upon the shiny car automobiles and going, I don't think this is where we're holding it. To a 180 and walk back. So what I found was that Midwest Furfest is actually held mainly within the Hyatt the Hyatt hotel space. They don't actually expand out to the convention center, and really have never until this year, where they had rented out 1 or 2 rooms. I think I don't know. I think it was mainly just room 21 in the ballroom area. In that sort of it's a very nice looking area. I think they've newly renovated it or something, but it was a very nice looking place. Finding it was a little bit of a pain, because their maps are I think they realized their maps were a little bit out of date and didn't really include how to get to those particular rooms. So we ended up going that way, and you basically have to take the land bridge off of the Hyatt into the convention center. But unfortunately for me, I was trying to follow the signs and I couldn't find it, and I actually almost went all the way to the Hilton when someone said, "Are you looking for someplace?" And I'm like, "I'm looking for room 21 in the convention center." So, she's like, "Oh, the convention center's back there." I'm like, "Really? I just walked 15 minutes." So already I was exhausted by the time I got to the panel, but it was actually kind of cool to see the place for the first time. As a side note, if you're going to new places dressed in fursuit, you need to really be careful. Make sure that if you're walking through where you think a doorway is, put your hand out in front of you a little bit so that if the door is not actually there, because bless you cleaning staff for keeping those windows clean. But I could see through them so well that I was like a bird. And I was like, oh man, this is kind of a cool little place. And there's like little glass doors that open up into the foyer or whatever in that area. So I was walking through what I thought was an open door, and apparently the one door was open, but the other door wasn't open. But the glass was so clean, I thought it was an open door. So I'm like, yeah, let's go in here. Bong, boom, boom, boom. It literally slapped my. I literally smacked my nose right square in the door because I thought I was walking through an open door, and apparently I was not an open door. Yay! Well, fortunately and unfortunately, I was by myself. Fortunately, because I didn't end up hurting myself so bad. Fortunately, so if I did hurt myself so bad, it would say unfortunately. But cat's distracting me. But basically, that whole thing was like, I had to take my head off and go, is my nose bleeding? Is my nose bleeding? Okay, my nose is not bleeding. I'm good. Put it back on. Get in there. So yeah, if you're going to new places in fursuit, if you're walking through what you think is open doorway, be sure to at least have your hands out a little bit in front of yourself whenever you're walking. It might not seem natural to walk in such weird ways, but your nose will thank you in the end. Luckily, this thing acts like a little cushion. You know what I mean? It's like a little airbag for my face. But anyways, that being said, so I found the place, and it was a nice open space, and we had all these, they were already kind of in the midst of it by the time I got there, because it took me like about a good 5 minutes to find the place. We'll go over more of the expansion into the actual convention center in a later video, because it's a very important thing and it's a very cool thing. But it's very important when I go on to my later topic, probably near the end of this little series of videos. So, dancing, the actual dancing thing itself, gives you a whole lot of respect for those who do those dance competitions and participate in those things. Because I didn't have this head on when I was doing it. I took it off. I kept my paws on, I kept my feet on, and I kept my tail on. Because I felt that was the most important aspects of things that would actually affect my ability to move and my ability to actually dance. So I kept those things on for the experience as to like how these large feet that I have. So if you don't know, my size of shoe is a 14 wide by itself. It's a common 14 wide. Basically almost the highest shoe size you can go before you have to buy it from specialty stores. But you add another about 2 or 3 shoe sizes to that, because I have Rooview foot paws on that expand my foot out probably an additional foot or so. So, not a foot, maybe more like 6 inches, but still like expansive enough where I have to step sideways. I have to kind of turn my foot to about 90 degrees and kind of step up like that instead of walking straight on. So dancing in that kind of footwear can get a little bothersome. Also, having a tail in your back end. So most of the steps it was kind of the bare bones of basic, like 2-step, 3-step dancing and basic motions. And those were kind of cool. So the most difficult motions were the steps back. So when you take steps backwards, you ended up finding that you had to swing your hip a lot harder than when you were doing it without a suit on. Without the suit, you could just take the steps back, move your hips minimally. But when you have this tail on you that kind of has its own motion thing, and it kind of like, it won't, like, it has motion to it, but you can't, if you take a step back and purely take a step back without moving your hips much, you're going to end up stepping on your tail. And if you need to take like 2 steps back, then you're really going to have trouble because you might trip on your tail, like going back the first time. So basically you have to swing your hip in the opposite direction. So if I'm taking a step back with my left foot, I found I had to swing my hip out to the right, to kind of force my tail to move out of the way of my left foot. And to do that in order to get, in order to give my foot space to actually plant back there. So same thing with stepping back to the right. If you step back to the right, you have to swing your hip to the left really hard and move your right foot back. So it was a little more, those steps back took a little more effort on the upper body part in order to do it, but it's also kind of cool because you kind of feel sort of connected with this costume that you put on. You have more connection with, there's consequences to, you having a costume on where you have to, it forces you to have to move your body in more exaggerated motions than you would normally, even think about doing, just, to perform these basic, step actions. And you kind of feel more connected with your suit in that way, even without the head on, because, the head is just basically, it's there. It's a static thing. It's not like something that will affect dancing motions that much. All it does is trap in heat. So I decided not to have it on while I was doing it, obviously, because that way it could keep you, because that would kind of make it so that I would just be exerting myself more than I should be. So, and I saw a lot of people were doing that. A lot of people had their heads off for this particular panel while doing this stuff because all it does is add exertion. And it might have been a suggestion that the guys made at the beginning of the panel, which, if they did, very good on them for suggesting such a thing. Because it's like, oh, you're ruining the magic. It's like we're just trying things out here at this panel. We're not actually doing the whole dance competition thing. We're just trying to, we're trying to experiment and see how this works. And or some of them might have been, doing it seriously. Like they really had intentions of going like that next level and saying, I want to really learn how to do this, so that maybe I might be interested in, doing it someday. I was more there for sort of experimentation and sort of trying to see, out of a morbid curiosity of how difficult it actually is. And it is tough. It is tough. I've got to say I have a lot of respect for those who actually do more advanced techniques. Because I was just doing basic stuff, 2 steps, 3-step, kind of basic motions. They were doing like, if you ever go to one of those things, or I could post a link to one of them. You've probably seen them around. If you type in Fursuit Dance Comp, you'll find it on the YouTube space. They get crazy, okay? And, you find a whole new respect for that art form when you're trying to do the basics yourself and realize that this takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of effort. And it was definitely a cool experience and one I've never had before at a convention, which is why it's probably the most memorable panel for me. For one, it was the first one in the Rosemont Theater, which was I've ever seen, in the Rosemont. It's my first experience with the Rosemont, which is kind of cool. But it also was the first time I've ever really seen a panel like that says, hey, here's a workshop where you can, try out learning dance moves, while in a suit. And there were people who were not in suit. Well, actually, a vast majority of them were not in suit, which is fair enough. If I were to ever go, okay, I'm really going to be serious about learning how to dance and doing it as sort of an exercise routine or anything like that, I certainly would not be doing it in my fursuit shoes and my fursuit tail and my hands all the time, because to me, it is a posture thing. Like you're kind of dancing in somewhat unnatural terms because you have larger feet and you have this tail on your back, so I think it hurts posture a little bit. So doing it outside of suit would probably be better for just overall health. Doing it in suit constantly could become bothersome if you have suit parts that kind of don't work with your body very naturally and kind of cause like issues with things like that. Then again, we have things called ballerinas and stuff like that where they stand on their tippy toes and it's crazy. So what do I know? I'm not a doctor. I'm a Roo, not a doctor. Damn it, Jim. Anyways, so that's it for the first video. I just wanted to talk about that particular panel because that was a pretty cool panel. I think that I hope to see it be adapted to more conventions, because you need if you're going to continue to have fursuit dance competitions and have it be a staple of furry conventions, I think it is very important that those who are in the know take the time to teach those who are less experienced and have an opportunity to kind of introduce them to that world, so that maybe someday the next fursuit dancing dude might be you out there, whoever you are. So having that opportunity to teach those things and to teach those who might be interested in participating themselves in the future, it's a very cool thing, and I think that should continue on. And I do hope to see that kind of panel at future conventions as well. But thank you very much for watching. This is my first topic on this on the MFF. There'll be future ones this week, so keep in tune for those. Kick that like, kick that subscribe, kick a comment in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching this Roo ramble. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you later.